We'll call to order the Torch Lake Township Zoning Ordinance Steering Committee meeting of April 4th, 2022 at 6:15. The primary purpose of this meeting is to discuss the agenda items listed below. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. There is no public, therefore there is no comment. The next item is approval of March 16th, 2022 minutes. I will open it up for comments.
So I have, I guess, a question.
Okay.
Setback from road, only change is that on water properties, the front of the home is water side, not the road. I guess I'm confused. I thought we were changing that so that the front was the roadside and the water in the ordinance.
Where are you?
Okay, down under Article 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down.
Yeah,
Setback.
that's what the current ordinance
working.
says.
Right.
That's not what's meant to be in the proposed ordinance.
Okay. So is this statement accurate? Does it accurately reflect what we said, or? Wanna change that? I'm thinking it
It's
should be the
partially
opposite.
correct.
Okay.
So we're in the current ordinance, when the property's on the water, the front
Okay.
becomes the water side, and then we have the
I
rear.
think so.
The
The
rear
rear is the
becomes
roadside
the
in the
road.
current ordinance.
In the current. In the draft ordinance, we're not going to change the terminology. The front is always the front and the water is always the water. You know, we're going to have like a water and we'll have a front still. The only thing that will continue to occur is that the front for a lot that has water frontage, the front setback's reduced to 35 from 50. So currently, that's what happens.
Okay, so, but the front was the water, so you're not really, it used to be the front was the water. It's always
Right.
been 50, it will stay 50 on
Right.
the water side.
Right,
The road side has always been 35
right, and called the rear,
and called the rear, so it's going to be called the front
But-
and,
but it'll be 35.
okay, so that's my understanding. Is that what this says?
No, I don't think that it does.
And do we not have a recording secretary tonight?
No. So I'll just be doing back of the envelope stuff.
Okay,
Well, you can watch the video, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we do. She'll look at the video and then do the minutes from it.
okay.
So I think the appropriate thing for this section is setback from road. The setback will be reduced, the front setback will be reduced to 35 feet for these properties, just like in our current ordinance. But the terminology will not change like in our current ordinance. You know, the roadside will always remain the front setback. And we'll be adding a water side setback in. It's kind of hard to write to explain what I'm doing, but I think that,
Okay, but the terminology will change.
right,
On waterfront properties, the roadside will become the front in terms of terminology.
right,
The setback will remain the same on the roadside at 35
Right.
feet.
right.
But I think you made the statement that the front is the road.
Right. The front
All
will
right.
always stay the road.
All right, so the front of the home is on the water side. That's just not correct. What
Right.
the back of the home is always the water side, is what you're saying.
Well, and see, when I'm doing it, I don't care which way is the front of your home. I care what the front of the property is. So your house, like on a waterside property, a lot of times you have your road front facing, you know, that's a decorative because it's on the road, and you have your water side and that's decorative because it's on the water. It's not really a back, you know, but
Yeah, we talked about this last time. The front and the rear with waterfront, with two different types of property, the waterfront and non-waterfront, it's confusing.
right.
Right, so.
Can
so-
we just, I realize now we're just talking about the minutes, so, but that's down the road. We ought to talk about having.
It seems to me it should say the front of the home is on the roadside will now be on the roadside,
Yeah,
and the setback will be 35, and will continue to be 35 feet.
right. Yes, that works. I think so
Otherwise,
that
I
it's
think this
clear.
is really confusing.
Yeah, that works.
We're going to have everybody more confused than they
Then we
already
Yeah.
are.
All right,
Okay, and then down under Article 9, sliding down, you have L. Scott, and then you have L. Carlton, and then you have L. Anderson. You see that?
yep.
Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what I said. I guess you could go back and listen to the recording, but I think what I intended to say there was that, that I feel if the planning commission has the proper tools and procedures, i.e. master plan and ordinance, then it should be fine to stay at the planning commission.
Yeah, I think I was thinking if the procedure is defined enough, it would be fine to stay at the planning commission.
Yeah.
If the procedures
Yeah,
are defined sufficiently. Then it should be fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any others?
That's it for me.
Laura,
Yep.
I'm good.
you're good, I'm good. All right. Sarah, anything?
that's good.
All right,
All right, I make a
Then-
motion to approve the minutes?
great.
Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Second.
All right.
It's been moved. Wow, I'll tell you, you guys are good tonight.
Let's move this along.
The motion has been made and seconded to accept the minutes of March 16th, 2022 with changes. No other discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving to our first item. We have, next item is approval of agenda. Any objections to the agenda? Then the agenda is approved by consensus. Next item is zoning articles to review, Article 6. And Sarah, as always, it's your ballgame.
I have a question before we start.
Sure.
The asterisks,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean?
For you, it doesn't mean anything.
Oh, okay, good.
That was my first question as well.
What about for the rest of the committee?
You-
No.
And they're only on certain ones.
Yes.
I know,
why.
that's why I'm asking.
Mhm.
Why?
Yeah. Nope, that was for me when I was working through this, and so some of them probably shouldn't have asterisks and that do, so don't worry about that. The asterisks will not carry through into the ordinance itself. It's for me.
All right, so then my first question is, will the airport air park, would we put anything in this area because it would abide to a residential and commercial districts? Or are we going to, you and I have talked a whole separate ordinance, but the question is, would it fall into this area? Or would we have a separate ordinance for that?
You could put it into this supplemental use section. We'd need to find which zoning district we'd want to put the airport information into. Well,
No, you'd have to
We-
define it as commercial. The air park
right.
is a residential.
We could do it in two different ways. We could pick the zoning districts and put air park in as a use. We could do it as an overlay district if it contains multiple zoning districts for the air park. If you wanted to do, where the hangars are and that subdivision and the runways, if you wanted to do that, we'd probably best do it as an overlay for that and then call that out in Article 4 instead. I have not touched anything related to the airport at all in this draft. My biggest concern with that is I don't want the whole draft to get held up because of that one big topic. And I think even the planning commission hasn't figured out exactly how they're moving forward yet in
Yep.
dealing with it. So
And that's fine. I
Yeah.
was just saying, would it be in here or do we want,
yeah,
The piece-
potentially.
or the question would be, do we want the PC to create a whole new
Yeah.
standalone ordinance for it?
It would have to come into the zoning ordinance in some form.
Yeah.
So it would need to be in here to regulate that land use. There may be portions of the airport that we could put into a separate ordinance,
Okay.
but we'd need to address it in some way.
Just try and make your life more complicated, Laura. Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Okay. So Article 6 supplemental use standards, these are items that were in Article 3 that had the approval process, and then we are going to reference in Article 3 these additional supplemental use standards for certain uses that have approval criteria. And these approval criteria could be something that the planning commission has to review, or it can be something that the zoning administrator has to review. And they apply to this use basically in any of the districts for supplemental uses. So we'll just go through them and see if there's any changes. I tried to bring over any text that made sense from your current ordinance, and then added some best practices or took out any language that I don't think is legal or you can't do or clarify. So tried to do a little bit of all of that. The formatting will format a little bit better once I get it into final layout. So if the letters or numbers don't match up in each section, don't worry about too much about that. For bed and breakfast establishments, did anybody have any concerns or issues with this type of use in the requirements for this?
I had none.
Okay.
None.
Okay. Accessory dwelling units?
I have a question on B. The owner shall live on the site. Does this, would this exclude or cause a problem if somebody was to long-term rent their place, have a long-term rental? I mean, what happens then?
Yeah, so, yeah, they could only long-term rent either the accessory dwelling unit or their house. And then they would need to stay in the other part of it. So you could not long-term rent both dwelling units.
That would need to be stated that way, wouldn't it?
Well, I
Well-
think the way it's stated, it implies, at
either.
least implies that, but I'm wondering if we want to be that strict, say somebody gets a job and they have their house on the market, but it's not selling, they do a, year rental or something like that, a long-term rental of the entire property. Would that preclude them from being able to rent the entire property?
Yeah, and that would be something I think that's a very good conversation to have. Would you allow for 2 long-term rentals on the one property essentially? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's a great housing opportunity, that would be available. A long-term rental is going to be anything over 30 days is the thing.
Right, so they could, rent. I get that, but I think that might be causing difficulties for somebody in the situation like I just mentioned, where, they have to move, or maybe they have to, work overseas for a couple of years and they want to come
Right.
back to their house or whatever. But I think that kind of causes an unnecessary hardship, or could possibly cause an unnecessary hardship. Yeah, they have to live in one of the units.
Is your mic on?
Sorry, thank you. I don't oppose renting out both. The 30 days, though, you would think around here, considering what people are willing to pay for a rental, 30 days seems kind of short.
Yeah.
Like, it's 10 grand to rent it for 60 days. I'm really only going to be there for the weekend, but I'll pay 10 grand.
Right.
I have to mention this. We have a house in my neighborhood that people are renting for a week. They're going to be there a week, but they know they have to rent it for the month, and they're paying over $200,000 for the month in order to be there for a week.
Wow.
I think that is a fairly common practice in places in, high
Right.
vacation value places that have the 30-day limit on rentals.
Yeah.
I've seen it in a number of places and into it myself when I've wanted to rent a place.
Do we care? Do people that are willing to spend that amount, are they not nuisances?
They're, they're involved with the Highfields. They're bringing their horses in.
Ah,
It's ridiculous.
I mean, well, it's ridiculous, but is it a nuisance? Is it a bother that, to your neighborhood? Do you think it's going to be a bother to your neighborhood?
Not at all.
Yeah, they're going to be there for a week. It's not like you've got partiers turning over every week.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean,
I mean, my feeling is in my neighborhood, we can't have them, but every 4th of July, the beach is packed and everybody's got their families there. It's no different than if a family rented a place for a week. It doesn't happen all summer long. It's not an ongoing problem.
So the question here for this one is whether or not we want to make it an option with some kind of conditions and let the planning commission decide, but there might be a special use permitted for them to rent out both units based on some type. So
Okay. Well, I can
I'd
change.
leave it with the PC.
Okay. I'll change that over to allow them both to be, but I know that it will be a discussion the planning commission will have in more detail. Anything else on the accessory dwelling units? We don't have any current regulations in our ordinance on accessory dwelling units. So this is all new language.
right.
I think they're very good. I like the limiting the size so that you don't end up with these massive carriage houses anymore. I think that's a really good addition.
Yeah.
I need to understand item D a little better because we're considering a basement as a accessory dwelling unit. I'm not, but it's so if there's only one building, you're saying we still have, if you have a bedroom in the basement, it's considered an accessory dwelling unit? I don't understand that.
Well, it'd have to be a dwelling, considered a dwelling. So it'd have to have a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchen in it to be considered a separate dwelling. So if they just have a finished basement area, it's not a separate dwelling. It wouldn't fall under this AUD section. But the reason that language is in there is that individuals don't always put it above a garage. You may want to add on kind of a little apartment for your actual mother-in-law to live in that's attached to the house. That's not really a separate standalone unit. But when you force them to be above a garage and not everybody wants to climb up and down stairs either. So that's where it's kind of trying to be flexible on how that looks. Maybe it's at the back of the attached garage, so this language is intended to allow something like that.
Well, I just look at it as very common to have a different part of your house with a kitchen and a bathroom and a bedroom
Yeah.
and a little sitting area. I mean, I would imagine that just about every home that's being built in Torch Township right now has that. And I just don't understand why it's just part of the house to me.
Right. Well, this does say in item C has a separate entrance too. So that would be one of the things. So if you had a kitchen in your basement with a bedroom and a bathroom, but you have and even though you have like a slider, it goes out to the beach, but that's like your summer kitchen, you got your winter kitchen upstairs or something like that, it wouldn't necessarily be an accessory dwelling unit. Because you're just using both. Because I have seen that in a lot of houses. They have a separate kind of like a wet bar or something like that.
We'll let the PCs.
Okay.
worry about that.
The next item is agricultural employee housing. So these are these are employees. This is not like what you would call migrant housing that's regulated by the state. Those are treated differently. So this is something like if you have someone that permanently lives on the farm, that takes care of the farm, that type of an employee. And sometimes that employee can also be, an additional family member that may, a lot of times you have mom and dad, they used to run the farm and now the son or daughter's doing it and they live on the farm. Help take
King
care of
Orchards
it.
has them.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So,
Well, now, we made some changes a couple years ago for King's Orchard for mobile homes.
Yeah.
So,
Was that for migrant housing or was that for?
well, it was
think it was
for
mine.
both because for them, they had people that basically work around the year, because once the crop is harvested, then they got the pruning of the trees, and then they go on that. And we allowed them a certain number of trailers with specific conditions. And I didn't see any of that language. And I didn't know if you were taking that out or not.
Yeah, that was one thing that I had marked. Just make sure that whatever we added in there or changed was still in here.
Yeah, that we're not restricting, going back and restricting what these guys can do on their farms.
Yeah, I'll have to double check.
We can just have this as a follow-up. No need to try to dig it out
It is.
now.
This language came, well, it doesn't have the mobile home. So in the existing, it talks about additional dwellings, one tenant house per 10 acres, sufficient to provide two separate, or to provide a lot with 2 acres and the minimum width of 200 feet.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the problem, because there wasn't a definition of a tenant house in the
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
So then the next one.
Yeah, and there was also what happens, like, does it move with the new owners that,
Yeah.
right?
So the next one that's in the existing says addition of mobile home on a farm when used for housing farm workers is acceptable, provided they're 50 feet apart, no more than 4 mobile
Right.
homes. So that language I did not bring over. The issue that I have with that language is mobile home, because we shouldn't regulate based on that type of construction to say mobile home. So I could write it in a different, try to write it in a different form, say, maybe we limit the width of it in the square footage of what that house is. But if they wanted to put a stick-built house on there for their employee housing, I think we have to allow them to do that. We can't say it has to be a mobile home.
Well, I think part of the dialogue that we had during that time was the fact that if in fact the farming stopped, they had to take the home out. And if you start making it more of a permanent structure, the expense associated with that, our thoughts were the mobile home, you slap on the wheels and you can move the item off. So I think that's another one I'd let the planning commission decide how they want to proceed with that,
Okay.
because I'm sure Jim King will have comments.
What I'll ask, do you remember if Todd was involved in that amendment?
I don't think he was.
Okay.
I think it basically, there was the mobile homes were denied by the zoning administrator, and it was appealed by Jim to the ZBA. The ZBA said, hey, what we need to do is go back and rewrite the ordinance in such a way that we take into account this type of requirement for the farms with certain conditions. So there's a group of us that sat around and came up with new language, which was there.
Mhm.
Because it basically was for Jim, because some of the other farms had more permanent structures
Yeah.
in place.
Okay.
I thought that was, in what was involved was the replacement of existing mobile homes.
No, they were going to expand, which they've
Oh,
never
okay.
done.
Okay.
They actually had an area on their plot that they were going to put these homes on. And they got septic treatment and all that passed, but I don't think Jim ever ended up doing it.
Okay, I have a question. In A, it says to allow for future land division of 2, and then in C, it says, oh, there's 2 A's.
Deed restriction?
Cannot be sold, yeah, under deed restrict, housing cannot be sold separately. So I don't understand that. Why would you do a land division you aren't allowed to sell the lots and they have to stay on the,
Yeah, and you could
Farm.
take that part out because you're required to continue to meet the zoning ordinance. But the issue, I mean, because you do have B that allows for a future land division. The idea with the deed restriction is to make anybody aware when they were to buy the property that this house is related to agricultural employee housing, and that's what it's supposed to be used for. And you can't expect to buy it and have two dwellings, essentially. It's more of a make aware the next person coming down the line. But then it just comes
unless
down
they
to
did a
enforcement.
land division?
Right. They would, yeah, be required to do a land division. If they have splits available. See, we're requiring them to build the house so that they can do a land division. But if they come along and they split all their property and they don't have any land divisions left and they have to wait 10 years to be able to split it again.
Then it's in the deed, so the buyer knows
Yeah.
that. Okay, I just didn't understand
Yeah.
that completely.
It's a hard thing to try to deal with. I think that I don't have a good answer because everybody struggles with how to allow people to do this, but then not have people take advantage of it. Or usually it's not the person that did it. It's somebody buys it and then, a couple years later or something, they want to go and do something and aren't following the rules. It's typically what happens. Okay. Agricultural tourism. This is, all about different kind of agricultural related items. Something that's not on here, and we don't really discuss in the ordinance, could go into this agricultural tourism section, is kind of farm to table operations. Somebody's growing product on their site or wants to grow it and then have almost like a bed and breakfast and people can eat there, kind of this immersion experience. Or like a farm stay, a lot of them are calling that now. People come and they stay on the property and then they go out and they help you take care of your horses or your cows or whatever for the weekend, and you feed them. How do you feel about those types of operations? I mean, more than likely it'd be more like an apple or cherry situation where somebody would come and stay and go out and pick grapes for wine or something.
But part of that, wouldn't that be part of the bed and breakfast? Because the conditions associated with the bed and breakfast would apply to that if somebody were staying on the farm, I would think.
Mm-hmm. They would
Or would because then the question becomes, is it more of a motel, hotel type stay? Now that you bring it up, that you could think of them doing something like that.
Right.
And if they're cooking food, then is that a restaurant? And would that be another special use you'd have to come for?
Right. So we do allow bed and breakfast as a special use in like the ag district. I'm thinking of something like, I don't really know, I guess, if it would be applicable, but like if King's Market, they wanted to build a house in one of their orchards and let people stay there, and then in return they work on the farm or something like that. Is that something you would want to entertain? Is that too big of a topic to discuss right now?
Yeah, but that would go to agricultural employee housing.
Well, but they're not employees. They're just coming up to stay for the weekend. It's like
For
a short-term,
fun.
Oh,
yeah, short-term
They're going to
rental.
pay you to work.
Yeah.
So
But you can't
farms
do
are allowed
short-
to have auxiliary dwelling units as well, so it could have a
Right.
kitchen in it, so then your bed and breakfast things
falls out.
doesn't,
Right.
causes problems, so it really would probably need to be a separate issue.
I mean, I haven't had anybody asking about it here, but I know that is something that's really people have gotten into. And I kind of, since COVID, people are like, I want to go back to the basics. I want to live on a farm and I want to expose people to this as well. So they buy 20 acres, build a barn, put a loft above it, and people come and stay and hang out with the farm animals for the weekend. and rent it as a short-term rental, essentially.
I think that the community would like that. All the input that everyone had when we were talking about the weddings in the barn, it was just a lot of support for what could other things be that in the future the farmers might want to do, and we don't want to stop them because it's hard.
But to me, it's something that would be interesting. It would be productive,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't be the least bit intrusive in the community. I mean, they'd be on the farm, maybe go to the restaurant, maybe go to the market or something, but I just, based on the discussion I see about every which way you can think of how it would apply to a different part of the zoning ordinance.
I would say we should make it a separate section rather than trying to shoehorn it into basically, a retail type operation by the look of it. A little bit, kind of like Frisky's Farm, the way they do it with the Halloween and Christmas and spring and all that stuff.
Okay.
But those are daily events.
Mhm.
And so would it fall into the event category then, having
Yeah.
to have a special use permit for it?
I think we could require a special use permit, but it wouldn't be an event. It would be more of a use that they'd only have to get one time and get approved. But I agree. I mean, I think it would make sense to pull it out and make it its own use, maybe have a couple of its own standards to try to, not over control it, but let them, let everybody know exactly what we mean there. So I'll make a couple of changes for that.
All right,
Anything else in agricultural tourism?
that's for me.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Customary agricultural operations. Any concerns with any of this?
I had nothing on that.
I do. And A, the carrying out of such practices should not generate any noise, odor, or pollution. How are you going to regulate odor? I mean,
I circled odor too.
you-
Well, manure is used as a fertilizer. So if you say it cannot generate any odor,
you're banning the
You're
use
banning manure,
of
the
natural
use of-
fertilizer.
yeah.
Yeah, and maybe that's not 100% appropriate there.
Even noise. You got farm equipment
Yeah, so
makes noise.
you can't plow up to the edge of your property and
Yeah.
plant it because you're too close to a neighboring property.
I'm wondering where I was looking to see if that was in the current ordinance somewhere. I don't see it. It may not make sense in that section specific to agricultural operations, because you're right, and some of that's protected by right to farm too. So either we could say unless protected by right to farm, or you could remove that part out, customarily agricultural operations.
Well, I think the environmental impact is important, because if a farmer does something that negatively impacts a neighboring property because of his farming practices, that's a problem. That's what we want to prevent from happening.
Right.
I can't give you an example, but
These streams,
huh?
if you have a stream running through
Yeah.
a dairy farm,
Right.
downstream is not going to be real happy with the water quality that's going to come down out of there.
Yeah, I mean, this does, item E says that if any of these standards conflict with GAMP's controls, that's something that, so to be protected by right to farm, or to have that as a defense when you go to court, you have to be in commercial operation, and you have to be following your GAMP that's under the state regulations. So if you are just commercial and you don't meet GAMPs, you're not protected by right to farm. And if you're not commercial, say you're just raising your backyard chickens, you're not protected by the Right to Farm Act, because that's not a commercial operation.
Does that right to farm act also protect the people around it? I mean, do those no?
No. So that's one of those things. So somebody could move in next to you and open a farm, and if they're commercial and compliant with GAMPs, they have an affirmative defense in court. You still can sue them,
Mhm.
but you as the neighbor will have a higher, it'll be more difficult because they have that defense already.
Mhm. I don't think it would hurt to call out some, I don't know how detailed you could or would want to get, but I would think that, if the wind is blowing at a certain, the wind has to be below a certain amount to spray your chemical stuff. I can't imagine there's not something like that already though, right?
Well, and that's what GAMPs talks about that.
Why wouldn't you?
But-
So
put
that does
GAMP
protect the people around it.
Right, if they're compliant with GAMPs.
Right.
But, me as a backyard cherry grower and my peach trees or my cherry trees out there, I'm going to spray them whenever I want to. I'm not required to be compliant with GAMPs if they're for my own personal use.
Right.
So then I am burdening my neighbor.
So I need to do something to make.
So would you put
Yeah.
E at the very beginning of this thing?
That may make the most sense. Move that up to the top and then
And then show
have
the
the everything.
exceptions? or-
Yeah, I like that. Because that just clears it up, and that I'm not trying to challenge anybody that's, doing this for a living, and compliant. This is more for the random one-off person.
All right.
Okay,
Ooh,
campgrounds.
sorry, I had a
Oh.
question. What is truck gardening? I didn't look it up. I was just like, what?
Where at?
6.6, the first sentence. General farming, truck gardening.
That's where they truck the product, where the farmer owns,
It's,
the farmer trucks his own produce.
Yeah.
Oh.
it's,
Oh,
yeah,
truck-
I know, I had to
trolley
look it up.
truck.
It's
Yeah. Oh,
basically,
truck
think
farm.
of somebody who, a smaller operation, they take their
Farm market or
produce to a
something?
farm market, or
Okay.
they take it to a restaurant, they contract with local restaurants, or they can
Okay.
even take it to a local grocery store, have
Okay.
a contract with them, but it's just basically,
Huh.
it's not, it doesn't go into the commercial distribution
Okay.
system, they take it directly to the end user.
That's a good way to explain it.
She's good that way.
When I bother to look things up.
Okay, item 6.7 campgrounds. So we don't have any requirements in our current ordinance. We allow campgrounds. Let me see where we ended up allowing them at.
I thought we,
In the commercial district is the only spot we allow them with an SUP.
So my question there was, how many sites per location? Is there a specific size of each site that you can have? And what goes into the campground? Is it tents only? Is it mobile homes? I mean,
Campground is any type of temporary recreational vehicle or camping
so a motorhome or a tent.
or we've had this come up recently, a park model of a type of a campground, a camper or an RV that sits there all year round.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think. I think the minimum square footage for a campsite, I want to say is 120 square feet that the state allows, but I may be mistaken. It's a very small for a state license. It could be something that the township could be more restrictive on and require larger lots or more separation between RV units. The state also requires 1.5 parking spaces per campsite somewhere within the campground for each site.
so I think you'd need the planning commission to put some restrictions or guidelines as to, what the sizes should be. I mean, as a for instance, if we were thinking of the air park, he's got that big section, big commercial lot in the front. If he wanted to put 10 units on there and jam them in there, he could get a special use permit to get but we have no restrictions or size or anything, and he could put whatever he wanted there. So I think there ought to be just some type of guidance as to what the spaces are. You know, how wide should the roadway be for somebody to go by?
The state
At the s-
regulations
At the state
has-
level?
Huh? Yeah, well, because they're required to maintain their state license, so they're gonna meet those minimums at least with the state. But if you want something more than that, there's just different campgrounds. You can go to some places and everybody's packed on top of each other, and then you go to other locations and they're, a lot of times when you go to a more rustic campground, they have a little bit more space.
Well, East Jordan, anybody see East Jordan over there at the bottom of the lake, Lake Charlevoix? I mean, they are packed in there like sardines.
Yeah.
Honcho Rest in Elk Rapids is the same way.
Yeah, so I just think the planning commission should think about, if we do that, what are we trying to do?
Okay.
I would
Alright.
think you'd want to use the Barnes Park as a model. They've got nice sized campsites.
That's county-owned.
Yeah, but you still use it as a model.
No,
if you
no, I
want.
know.
Yeah.
I keep
Like-
having to remember that we're not involved in that.
Yeah. For
So-
density and spacing requirements, that
Yeah.
could be a good base.
So we could put a campground anywhere as long as you have 10 acres.
Anywhere we only allow it in our commercial district.
Okay.
See, that's why I think in terms of the airport area,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of commercial there.
Okay, we can have the planning commission talk about that a little bit. I'll get some details on Barnes Parks when we talk about it. I can let them know what kind of density we're looking at in there. The next couple all deal with automobile repairs. So minor automobile repair are kind of your quick lube facilities, kind of those type of operations, maybe a tire shop. And then your major are your body shops, your engine repair places. Those are your major automobile repairs. So they're very similar as a type of a use, except for the major does allow for things to occur in a screened area in the rear and the side, where the minor's all within the building. And that you can store outside with the major, which is not allowed with the minor. Any
But-
comments?
You say that remaining on the property overnight, I'm just wondering, shouldn't we require the same fencing as we do in 6.9B if we're letting them stay overnight?
Yeah, so if they're on site and they're staying overnight, you want them to be screened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you hear you say inside the building. Oh, or in
Or-
Or in the
yard,
rear
yeah.
yard. But I think that's the same language that says in major. So I think that in both of them, I need to be clearer that if it's stored outdoors, it needs to be behind a fence.
And the same
Yeah.
masonry wall, the opaque, because I don't think we want it, the see-through fence.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I made these notes forever ago, but I had 6.8D highlighted and 6.9E and 610C just noted as, I don't like this. And I noted at M88, it seems that they've done this, but maybe not.
You mean putting vehicles up for sale
Yeah.
in the front yard?
Yeah.
So you don't like that this is restricting it?
Yeah.
What if I put the selling of vehicles shall be prohibited on site unless approved as an automobile sales facility?
Okay.
Well, there's nothing to say that a facility can't do all these things.
Yeah.
But the problem that East or Lakeshore Motors is going to have with this is the compliance with what's parked outside. Because
The guys down there?
Yeah,
but they'll be grandfathered. So the next guy's going to have to worry about it.
yeah.
Well, only if they change the use. If they sell it as is, the next guy's still grandfathered too.
Because it's commercial.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think that the reason we put that language in there is just because a lot of times it seems like repair facilities naturally become a sales lot or have for sale by owner signs put in them. And then you get 5 for sale by owners out front and it becomes more of a sales lot. And trying to limit that and say, okay, if you want to sell cars that you fix, you need to become a sales facility and not just have this up front.
I don't know if you're to it yet, but 6.10 on the first sentence, do we want to add the word automobiles in that list?
I'm sorry, where?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
6.10, the first sentence.
Sentence.
We name everything else and then say or similar items. We don't even put automobile. That was a good one. I like that.
All right, so going back to 6.9C,
6C. Okay.
the 60 decibels, what level? I mean, is that your lawnmower size?
It's a little bit less than a lawnmower.
So the question is, do we need to increase that so that they can cut their grass and stuff? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, I know what you're trying to do is to make
Mhm.
sure they're not running some kind of equipment,
Right.
but most of the stuff they're going to run is what, air pressure
Well,
type
you got air
stuff.
compressor is going to be a lot
Yeah.
more than 60.
I mean,
Well, and that's why I was trying to say at the property line so that hopefully that makes them shut their doors when they're running.
yeah, but
Mhm.
those compressors are always outside.
Yeah.
And they're very noisy, but you could make it exception or duration or something like that so that, oh, well, it takes me 20 minutes to mow the side yard. I'll be
Yeah.
done in time and they can't complain.
Yeah. I mean, and we could take that requirement out because you still have standards. Your special use standards in your ordinance say that it can't be disruptive to the neighborhood and noise, smoke, and fumes and all of that. So it kind of gets caught into that. And I guess then the planning commission could say, hey, this doesn't have any neighbors, so we don't need to be specific. So I don't mind removing that.
Either that or just leave it in and ask the planning commission what their thoughts are. Let them decide if they want to keep it or modify it or
Okay.
tie it back to somewhere else.
I say remove it now.
We can't do that.
We're
We
only
will-
Put it in
recommending-
very light gray.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at the planning commission level.
All right.
Automobile sales and rentals, any issues or concerns with that?
I had a couple of things. One was, should we require a size of lot for doing that? Number one, and then number two, what size building would you have as their office? Is it going to be a combination office, repair shop? I'm not sure we put enough in there to say, what are we thinking of automobile sales and rentals are? It's not going to be a big dealership. So it might be something new, which would then fall under. So is this then, do we make this like a special use permit required?
Yeah, these would have a special use permit.
So
So-
the, right up here, the Torch Bay, like they would be grandfathers, of course, but it would be applicable to a place like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is, do you want to put a little shop like that on the side of the road, or are you looking for something a little more, what's the right word? It looks a little nicer. That's
Yeah.
because again, there's I understand what that corner lot is, that's fine, but do we want the next one to not have some standards associated with it?
I kind of think it's got some character.
I've heard that line before.
So
I
we
think-
do require 100 foot of minimum lot frontage for this. There's no minimum lot area. I think that's kind of hard because in some of the village, they're kind of small pieces, some of those, the village business areas. I mean, they may have to acquire a couple of properties anyways at 100 feet in width.
Well, and then wouldn't all the landscaping and building, facade requirements still apply?
Yeah, because this is, the only places this is allowed is the village business and the commercial districts. So the landscaping would all apply and the facade requirements, yeah. Are you concerned about like flags on vehicles and balloons on vehicles and stuff like that at all? No?
I hadn't thought about that, no. I was just trying to think of, someone puts up a small building and then has a bunch of cars on it.
Yeah,
We're not, it could be a jammed lot for all.
yeah.
Well, wouldn't the minimum building requirements apply? No.
Not in commercial, we don't have any minimum building.
Okay.
So I
Yeah,
mean, essentially
national.
somebody could have like a little shed that they just put up that they run out of, or for example, like Carvana, they have vending machines. Like there's nobody there. They just put it up. You go and you put in your code and your car comes down on the elevator and you get to drive it away.
We'd
that
be
is
a
a-
destination.
Yeah, I mean, that is a building
I've
that's
never seen a
built, but
Carvana. Let's go. Oh, we can get an ice cream at the Scoops
Yeah,
there.
yes.
they used to have almost like it was like a big coin, like you put in like in that major car come. I don't know if they still do that now that they're more popular, but they don't have one. I think the closest one's somewhere down by Chicago. If you order a car, you have to go pick it up down there. If it's
I
not
did see
delivered.
one on the road on the way home from
Yeah.
Indiana last
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
All right, so that's just thoughts for the planning commission.
Okay. 611 automobile service stations. These are gas stations. And the requirements for gas stations. We don't have anything in our current ordinance, so this is just some language, different things that usually we're trying to protect the neighboring properties related to gas stations.
So the only comment I have, and I think it might apply in a few other places, it's kind of in here inconsistently, is like under D, the fencing. Which way does the finished side face? I think we say that in some places and we don't in others.
Okay.
And I don't know if you have to add meeting all the state and federal regulations for it with the petroleum and petroleum products.
I don't think we're gonna have to worry about petroleum.
Well,
But this
would-
is, this is a perfect example, I think, of, I catch myself thinking about today. And we really have to pay attention to 20 years from now. What impact will this might have when we're not around to look at it? And isn't anybody going to be building gasoline stations because the car companies aren't going to be building any gasoline powered cars? So,
Going to be building electric
Right.
chargers,
I think
charging
we should have-
stations.
I think we should have, if somebody puts up a service station, they have to have electric stations and they have to be hooked to a wind turbine.
Did you just suggest a wind turbine?
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But they were going to have to put up a bond of like
Right.
$2 million or
Yes.
something.
That's not enough.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, home occupations.
So a quick question on 612, 613, and 614.
Mm-hmm.
The key words that I saw was incidental and subordinate to the principal, and they're all consistent. Is there a way to combine these things? Because they seem to be saying the same thing. The principal has to be there.
Yeah, that's what I
I
noted.
agree.
Lots of overlap.
I can, yeah, I could put them in. I'm surprised I didn't do that because some of them, yeah, I can combine them together and I can always put for cottage industries only, blah, 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 you know, whatever those regulations.
I have, excuse me, in 612, wait a minute, 612D said home occupation shall be conducted primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 613F, it's only, and 614F, it is only. And so you have to have either primarily, or if we're going to combine them,
Mm-hmm.
we
Be
have to decide
consistent.
on.
Just make it consistent.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
only. My recommendation is only.
Okay.
And then the 6.13C, is it the discretion of the planning commission or the zoning administrator? Laura, what are your thoughts?
It would be the planning commission because the cottage industry is a special use permit.
Okay. All right. Then in 613D, do you want to put anything about decibel levels? Because you are now talking to manufacturing.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if parts of the cottage industry might fall in with the other two, and now you've got manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
environment.
Yeah, I think that because it says or others conditions in excess of it is typically associated with the use of residential purposes. That's where when the planning commission is doing their special use permit, they're going to evaluate what the actual industry is and then say yes or no, or have you provided documentation that you will not be noisier than your neighbor, essentially. I mean, personally, the distinction between home occupation, cottage industry, and home-based business, the lines cross and are so blurry and gray that they're very difficult to deal with. They're frustrating to deal with, I think, at times because it's just what you're going to do or what you tell me you're going to do. So you're a home occupation if you don't have any employees, but as soon as you add an employee, do you come back and tell me that, oh, I added an employee? No, you just continue on because your neighbor has 5 kids and they all drive. So what's the difference between the 5 kids and the 1 employee parking at your property? You know, the impact on the neighborhood. They're difficult things to deal with. And most people just happen to not tell the whole truth when they call the zoning office to see if they can do something.
Laura would.
Yeah.
Wow, that's why we have a ordinance enforcement
Right,
officer.
exactly. Okay. Outdoor sales and display.
So just, you're going to try to figure out how to consolidate.
I'll
this.
consolidate them. Yeah, I'm surprised that I didn't do that, but there must have been something when I was trying that I went, this isn't working. But I don't
Okay.
recall. So I'll try it again.
All right.
So these are accessory uses that they're close to the building. So think of, I don't know for sure if Eastwood Market, but you know, a store that maybe has like wood chips they put outside on their sidewalk, or wheelbarrows, you know, at the hardware store, they put their wheelbarrows outside on their sidewalk, or just outside the building. So this is not intended to be, you know, displays outside, big displays. These are small, right next to the building kind of displays on the property.
Do they have to take them in at night or leave them out?
This does not say what they're supposed to do, if they can leave them out or not. Do you have a preference?
I'd prefer them to take it in.
You look at me. I
Laura,
don't care
you're
if they leave them
laughing
out.
Well, that
Well,
works, that
People
works
steal
well
them,
with
throw them in the side of the road and stuff. I'm just,
Yeah. Oh man, gosh, I just like to think that people are nice.
but yeah.
I think I see they like chain them up or whatever, right? The ones the Adirnock
Right.
chairs or however you say that
Well, that-
outside
The
the hardware
Adirondack,
store.
Adirondack? Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
That's fine, but riding down the road, I see plastic chairs thrown out in the, on the side, you know,
Man.
that are like outdoor stuff. So I'm just saying, you know, if it's a business, I would think they'd want to try to keep it neat, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, it
I mean,
But I
Depends on
can
the-
see chaining it up
Yeah, if
rather
you
than
secure it.
hauling.
Depends on the business. Pine Hill isn't gonna pull their stuff in at night.
Yeah.
No, I understand
Right.
that, but they don't have signs out there. They've got their products. This is sales and display, so I think,
Yeah, it's a little bit different than Pine.
yeah, than Pine Hill, but maybe, to your point, that's a valid point. I don't care, I'm just saying, you know.
I understand the problem. It's just that it depends on, Torch Bay Marine has boats outside. That, if they're for sale, that's an outside sale. There really isn't that much when you think about it. And the only other one I can think of is King's.
All right,
They've got stuff
forget I
outside.
said anything.
Okay. Yeah, usually it seems like it's like the hardwares, like the Ace Hardwares or Gilroy's. There is a Gilroy's that I've seen. They actually like fence their whole parking lot so that they don't have to move their items in and out.
Ah,
Like, it's just
yuck.
big chain link fence. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. The next item is kennels and veterinary clinics. So these are additional standards for this use that are not in our current ordinance. Does anybody have any concerns? Let me look and see. I don't remember where we allow kennels at. I think they're in the ag district. Oh, they're in the ag district by right. And then they're in the village business as a special use permit, and they're in the commercial district by right.
Okay.
And veterinary clinics are allowed in the village business by right, commercial by zoning administrator, and village business or village residential as a special use permit.
I didn't have anything.
I
Anybody
didn't
else?
either.
Okay. Hotels and motels. This is new language. Sometimes some of the ordinances say they limit the number of nights you can stay in a hotel or motel. I don't know that we necessarily would have that issue here where they say you can't stay there for more than 30 days or something like that. So if somebody can't live in a hotel. But I don't know, like I said, I don't know that that's a problem here that we need to try to fix something that's not an issue.
Do we need to put in there no kitchen or cooking so they don't put in hot plates and that kind of stuff? Or refrigerators?
I mean, you could if you wanted to. I mean, because
Yeah.
they have some hotels that are suites like that where they have the whole kitchen and,
Yeah,
you know, I don't know. I don't know if you'd want to limit that or not.
I don't think so.
I don't know what the cabins are up there at the motel.
That's what I was wondering too. I don't know.
If they have kitchenettes in there or not.
I
I
don't
Or if
feel
they're
like
just-
you almost any hotel I stay at least has the fridge, microwave.
Yeah.
Might not have a sink.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
and
that's a PC question.
okay.
Let them play with that one.
This is Bob's favorite line.
Hey, that's what we got those great people for.
That's right.
We're already helping them with their workload.
Religious institutions. So this is some new language, not too many details related to it. Does anybody have any issues with any of this language?
On D, I was confused. I'd have to read it again. I just made a note. I don't get this one. 2 sentences, question mark?
Oh, maybe it's kind of a run-on.
Maybe.
I can take a look at it.
Okay.
Not a problem. Golf courses and facilities, any questions, concerns? This is new language as well.
So you have restrictions in 3 and 4 on the distance from property lines abutting residentially zoned land. I'm wondering if it shouldn't include other type of land? Or all zones?
You know, I think it could say all zones. I mean, our commercial is very limited. They're not going to put a golf course in the commercial. So it's going to be primarily in the ag district, which
Right.
is either going to be ag zoned or residential, or I think all zones
I
make
think,
sense.
Yeah, for the safety, I mean, for swimming pools, I think, just generally any pool that's being used by the public, basically, should have some sort of restrictions and then, golf course, I don't know. Yeah. It just helps from spillover on somebody else's property too.
Yeah.
Lee, you ought to be all over this one.
Well, I'm just sitting there thinking about what we have in the current, but it's a PUD. And I was thinking, I can't imagine anybody wanting to put another golf course in the area, but if Agaming wanted to expand, this is just the first piece of what a golf course would have to go through. I mean, you'd have to go through a tremendous amount of other stuff, the PUD and all the other regulations. So I just figured this was kind of put in here because you felt just ought to have something to identify something about golf courses. Because the bulk of the regulations wouldn't apply in this particular section.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this would be somebody if they were coming in without going through a PUD or anything special. Maybe it's just a 3-hole, like a little golf course or
Or somebody could put a miniature golf course.
right, something like that. Or if it were just a driving range and it wasn't a full-on course, these rules would apply for that because that could be on a smaller piece of property, the
Yeah,
driving
then
range.
If you were doing a driving range, I would think especially abutting up to residential, you'd start requiring things like side fencing,
Yeah.
because I would put a lot of golf balls in somebody's backyard
Mm-hmm.
or
Well-
through their window and something.
Yeah, I guess my concern about the golf courses is simply that it would be addressed in other areas other than this, that's all.
Let's see.
Yeah. I mean, you could have this driving range. You think of them as being kind of not too big of a commercial operation, but you've seen the Top Golf operations, right, where they're 4 stories long and they're driving ranges
Right.
and they have TVs and a bar and,
Well,
it's
that
not
be-
just your neighbor, little golf course driving range anymore.
That would be your structure, and you could put that out there in a big farm area.
Yeah.
Could totally see us there one day.
Yeah. 6.2 is sexually oriented businesses. So this is new language. I would suggest, unless you are very passionate about something, that we just leave this alone because this is driven by case law.
Driven by what?
Case law
Oh, yeah?
for this use. So there's been a lot of court fights over sexually oriented businesses, what you can regulate. So you can only regulate secondary effects from the type of business. So everything that you do is to protect the neighboring property or the neighbors or things
Okay,
like that.
so
So
explain this one to me. In 6.20A, you can't have a sexually oriented business within 1,000 feet of another sexually oriented business. But section B, well, let's put them 500 feet away from churches and schools and childcare centers. That doesn't make sense to me.
yeah. Do you want to require it to be 1,000 feet from schools and parks and stuff?
I prefer 10,000 feet, but
If
It-
we
that
have the
doesn't-
option,
it just
You could
doesn't.
go up to I'd be okay with going up to 1,000 in that regulation.
I would agree with that.
I mean, you can't, the issue with going to 10,000 is that.
Oh, I was just
I
being
know, but
facetious.
then you end up zoning them out. You're like, we allow them, but you have to be this far apart and you can't meet that. And so then you get into a whole nother argument. So I can change that 500 to 1,000. That's fine.
I don't care if you have two sexually oriented businesses within 500 feet of each other, but just that it just seemed to be,
Well, I think
it
having,
just
the-
doesn't make sense to allow them to be closer to a childcare or a school or a church than to another, but you got to keep them farther away from another sexually oriented business. So,
well, I think the distance between them prevents you from having a
Concentration.
section in town that's like, a street that's all sexually
I
oriented.
agree with
business.
that, yeah.
Well, you want to make sure there's not too much competition close together too. You know, you got to protect them.
Red light alley.
There you go.
But that's good for business. That's why you always see a Meijer and a Walmart so close together.
Right.
Anyway.
All right.
Okay, anything else for sexually oriented businesses? Okay, contractor's yard, 6.21.
Oh, wait a minute. I had one other thing.
Sure.
6.2K.
Yes.
It says any booth, room, or cubicle,
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 excepting an adult motel. Now, does that say you can't have an adult motel?
Well, this
Because I
is,
know what I think of when I think of an adult motel. Not that I've ever been to one, but
so this is just regulating, yeah, because like a hotel would be regulated as a hotel under building code, even though it's just a adult motel. So these are talking about, yeah, like small rooms, what they would be for them. So the adult motel would still be allowed, meeting everything else. It just doesn't have to have these minimum dimensioning requirements that these small booths have to have.
They're for multi-turnover evenings.
Right. Like when you go back behind the
by
curtain.
the hour.
Right.
That's the point.
I think
Yeah.
I pulled this up in the current one and it had the word accepting, ACC. I could be wrong because it's an old note, but I put in current ordinance, it's accepting. Oh, so what are we trying to say?
Right. Mhm.
Where are you?
On K, the one that we were just talking about, 6.20 K. So
Oh,
which
it
one?
is accepting an adult motel. That's got to be a typo.
I was going to say that has to be a typo in the old one. We are currently accepting an adult motel.
Yeah.
Somebody got it through.
I guess the question is, what should it be? And the way I read it, it should be except EX.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
should be. But, so what you're saying is an adult motel wouldn't be bound by these
Correct.
things.
Correct.
So just,
They're going to get caught up though in construction code. So construction code's going to say they have to meet the ADA.
yeah,
You know, those things are all going to be in a hotel. You can have, a door with a lock, hopefully on it.
Hopefully.
and so this is, again, governed by case law that does not allow us to
Right.
prohibit an adult motel.
Right. And we do allow them in our current ordinance. Some of this language mirrors that current ordinance language that you have in your existing ordinance. I think the issue is if you don't have them in your ordinance, there's a guaranteed fight, that somebody can come along because you don't have it there. You also have them in your ordinance, and it's a guaranteed fight that you're going to have some sort of a fight with them. When they come in to build these types of businesses, they say, okay, it's going to cost us $10,000 to get through permitting, and it's going to cost us $100,000 in court. Like that's the budget, just how it works. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, hopefully they would choose to go somewhere else nearby that doesn't have zoning at all, and it won't be an issue. But contractor storage yard. This I will check for consistency with the other sections of the ordinance relating to the fencing. Okay, drive-ins and drive-throughs. So in this ordinance, we kind of pull that out. So there's, for example, a bank. So you can see banks are allowed in certain districts, and then drive-throughs and drive-ins are allowed in certain districts with certain approval processes. Instead of doing banks, drive-in banks, restaurants, restaurants with drive-in, it's just you have restaurant, and then there may be a separate approval process just for drive-ins. So this is just specific to the drive-in component of that use, this drive-in and drive-through services.
Because I was trying to figure out how that would apply to 31 Scoops.
Yeah.
Because we haven't decided that yet, right?
Right.
We did for the license.
They have you did the approval for their liquor license, so they wouldn't be considered a drive-in or a drive-through service. They're just a restaurant, and then they are also doing outdoor sales for the watercraft.
But, because I thought, that's fine. I thought we got into that because Alan went down that path as to whether or not they would be considered drive-through because they could just leave their car running or whatever and run in, run out.
Yeah. I don't think that you could, I guess, leave your car running and walk inside, but that's not really the, intent for that use.
This is fine.
Okay.
I had
So-
a question
Mhm.
on 6.22A. So only one driveway per parcel? Is that why is that? Like, what
Yeah.
if it's safer to have traffic at two?
It's the idea is to try to help navigate traffic within the site so you don't have too many in and outs, because then it can hurt the flow of traffic around the building.
Gotcha.
if
So
have to
you make
drive in.
the exit, you can only turn right
Right.
or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of helps with the flow, because if you have two exits, then where do you come in? And you've got the drive-through, and people try to cut in line. I've only really seen it worse, like in Traverse City on Front Street. They've got the McDonald's there. I don't know if you've ever been in there. The drive-in kind of like wraps through the parking lot, but people will come in the alley and cut in line to
Oh,
get into the drive-in, the drive-through, and just because it has so much going on.
yeah. Gotcha. Thank you.
Self-storage facilities. So these are your mini storages.
Yeah, I had the same question. Do we want to require minimum acreage? You know, 10 acres, 5 acres, number of units, size of the unit. Because I don't think we cover that in the new, the new ordinance that you guys worked on. So that would be for the PC to decide.
Yeah, I guess I had noted on here, I wasn't clear what it was. Is it like a rental, like self-storage? Like,
Yeah, it's like what's down there just before you get to the
Yeah.
market.
yeah. I don't know if I noted that because I was looking at E. It doesn't seem like stuff that you would have at a self-storage place.
Yeah, so a lot of times,
Well, you do if I think if you could, if the person had a big enough lot and they then rented out space along the
Gotcha.
fence line and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you'd want any of that.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that no outdoor storage of any kind. This does give that opportunity, so there could be some outdoor storage if you meet the requirements of having a wall or a fence.
Do we have, because everything in village business is so small, does it kind of, do we have anything there where a business would need to have some storage, but there's not enough room? Where it would-
Or you
Be
could buy
nice.
2 lots. You could buy 2 commercial lots.
what if nobody's selling them?
I don't know. We know somebody is selling one of them, and it's a 2-acre site.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the size of the other lots are, but, you know, somebody just bought a house there. It was 13 acres or something.
I'm not familiar.
And
Where is this, Bob?
just down across from Eastport Market.
Oh,
They
okay.
bought it and they wanted to put farm animals or something in there and yeah. Well,
Some of it, I think,
They
is
may
zoned
not have
ag
thought it.
behind there.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think the PC ought to decide what size.
Okay.
Okay, I'll
They
put
want-
that note in there.
Self-storage also on C, under certain circumstances, would you want the landscape screening? Let's say it's next to residential, require landscape screening there, or is that just something when it was approved that the PC could put that as a condition on it?
Well, I think that's a new condition, right? That we have in the new one that you've got to put along the sides.
Yeah,
But
so
that
they
doesn't
would,
say that there.
yeah, yep. I'll add that screening from neighboring residential properties. I think that's good.
Why would you restrict it to just residential neighbors?
You could do any.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
I
any.
mean, the idea is the aesthetics.
Right.
Now, the planning commission may not agree with that, but
Extractive industries, so your ordinance does not allow for extractive industries, so it's up to you if you want to put these in there or not. You can not put anything, not say anything about extractive industries, and that's fine. Or if you have this, if for some reason you add them into a zoning district later on, you already have these kind of requirements. Extractive industries are another one of those things the state only allows the local government to regulate in certain ways in that. So it would be up to you. Do you want to include this language, or do you think we should just not talk about them at all because they're not a use that's allowed in the ordinance?
Are you saying not even have it in there?
Yeah, we don't have it in any of our zoning districts. The thing is that because we don't, if somebody comes along and says, because the state says wherever the natural resource is, you have to allow it.
Right. We had this discussion earlier.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought we had to have a section with it in there.
Yeah, so we didn't end up adding it into any of the districts when we talked about the districts.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Right, in the
It's
use
not
table.
an SUP, so.
Right. So we just left it out going, hopefully nobody will come along and ask. But I kind of feel like because we don't have it in any districts, if somebody comes along and wants to do it, we may have to amend the ordinance to allow it in that district as an SUP. And at least we already have this language here that says this is how we're going to want you to regulate it if you do come along and want to put it in there.
so this language's been upheld in court.
Right. Most of it anyways, yeah. Because that's all case law and for that. And, the state has dabbled with taking away all the control from the local government, which at a certain point right now, we kind of have our hands tied behind our back, where they say you can't regulate most things. And then everybody's upset at the township and we're going, yeah, but we can't do it. Like the state's taking our control away. We can only regulate A, B, C, and D. And it's a very frustrating process. So I kind of wish the state would either give the control back to us or just take it all away so that.
So what would happen if somebody came and said, I just bought this farm property and I want to excavate, you know, I want to excavate on it.
Right,
I mean, because I can't imagine them doing it
right.
anywhere else. But then we'd say, well, it's not allowed in agriculture, and then they would take us to court. And I mean, and then these would apply, or how would that work?
So somebody would come along and we'd go, well, we don't allow it in any of our zoning districts. And they would say, well, you have to, you know, or you can't do that. You can't regulate it in that way. And we would say, okay, well, we'll go in and add it as a special use permit in that district. And then you have to comply with these regulations that are in our ordinance.
So just get back to this then.
Right.
We said, well, this is, so you're saying we might as well have that?
It's kind of a built-in, so then you don't have to deal with it when it does come up, or if it comes up, it's already in here for the regulations, and then we just have to add it in that district.
Well, and then all we have to do is modify it if the state does other
Right.
things.
Yeah.
I think leave it in for the PC to look at.
Okay,
I
so we're
think
gonna
the
leave it in
PC
then.
will like
Right.
We're
it.
gonna leave it in.
Right.
Okay, then
You're
I
just
have,
getting excited because we're almost to solar panels and wind farms.
I am.
We're.
I am. Look at
He has
I'm
already
gonna
been
behave
warned.
myself.
He has already been warned about, we have 20 minutes to get through the next 15
Okay, I wanna go
pages.
back to section C,
Mhm.
oh no, D, performance guarantees.
Mhm.
In here, it said that financial guarantees or assurances as prescribed in Article 12 may be required. I think that should be shall be required. I think it has to be mandatory that somebody puts up a financial guarantee, in this particular case, for reclaiming the property when the excavation's done.
Yeah. You know, something I just did too, I just had this experience. They talked about the performance guarantee being evaluated every 2 to 4 years because of the cost of things being different.
Right.
You know, and because mining or extraction goes on for so long, you collect money today, in 20 years, that money is not going to fix whatever is left over there. So there's some language that I was just working with an attorney on that says either the reclamation needs to happen in stages, and then the performance guarantee is based on kind of like that year's
review.
status quo and what your plan is. So it's continuously reviewed. That also helps the township because, you know, these performance guarantees, either owners change, things change, and then you can't ever collect on it in 20 years. You know, the bank's gone defunct or something like that. So I liked that suggestion about reevaluating it every so many years.
So put that in there.
Well, I would think that, and I'm looking here, we don't have it in the solar panel thing, but would be an automatic escalation based on the inflation, an inflationary cause that would cause that performance guarantee, however much is initially required, would be continually required on an annual basis even to be added to upgrade to keep up with the current cost.
Well,
Just for that exact reason. By the time a project gets done, it could be 10 or 20 years and the costs are going to be totally out of whack with the original amount was.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody do that for solar or for wind, so I'll have to ask.
Be a trendsetter.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. I like that. I like that better than just set it and forget it because it's so hard to collect. But I'll have to see, you know, with the extraction, it's changing all the time. And so I think we have good justification to always be evaluating it, where a solar or wind, the equipment's in. And so, you know, the site's not changing, it's just the market's changing. And so I'm wondering, I'll mark that down. I'll ask the attorney if that's an option.
plus the fact, solar panels, there's some, I thought there's issues environmentally when they go to destroy them.
Solar panels and wind turbines, they can't be recycled. They bury them. Oh, good, I get you going on that stuff.
Huh?
I'll get you going on this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Laura's, any other comments?
Have we moved on to solar energy farms or are we
Yes.
still on? I think my only real question on that was, so this is solar energy, we decided was just a SUP in ag.
Mhm.
And so what happens with, have we addressed like solar panels on housing roofs or
Yes.
private? This is an energy farm. I'm thinking that's
Yes.
different than personal. So have we?
We did in Article 2, we talk about personal solar. It's near the end of Article 2.
I know we talked about it before, but I was trying to.
Yeah, so this would be like your utility grade
Right.
solar farm situations.
You know, we could put wind turbines out there in the middle of the lake, Torch Lake, and get that south wind coming up there. and
Yeah, right.
probably
Torch
run
Lake
enough
and Lake Michigan, I
electricity
like
to
that.
Run the
Yeah.
whole lake.
Yeah. I will fund a study that says the only viable place to put it is the far north end of the lake.
Probably have to be
And
there
no,
because-
and no further away than 10 feet offshore.
And I
And they
just,
can walk right through the property to get to it, right? They can pull
Yeah.
their boat up on the beach
Yeah.
and walk up and down to
Yeah,
get to
we'll
it.
designate Dragonfly Lane as
Yes.
an ingress and egress
Oh, there we
point
go.
for construction.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for solar farms?
Yeah.
I'm gonna
yeah.
look into the performance guarantee
Laura's got-
discussion.
Laura's got something.
Yeah, I just had noted, this is just formatting, that 6.20, when I was noticing intent and purpose is pretty standard, but 6.20 didn't have that same formatting.
Wait, 620?
Yeah, the sexually oriented businesses.
Okay.
And then on 625B5, I think I put like emergency key boxes or something because Knox is a brand. I don't know if we want to require that
Maybe you
brand.
meant lock boxes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Laura, where are we?
Page 39.
6.25B.
Safety access.
Page
Okay, okay,
39.
I'm with you.
Can I say, I understand what you're saying. Does your company provide some sort of a similar box and you don't want to compete?
No, I mean, we probably actually do, but just emergency key box or something generic. would be good.
Yeah, I like that.
And then 8, there's an assure, should be ensure. And then 8B, I just noticed very specific. Is it necessary? The 8 feet at the time of planting seems like that's a pretty large plant,
8 feet?
right?
Yeah.
That's big, and you'd have to have a lot. That seems, wow. I just put wow.
Yeah. That is larger than, well, I don't remember. Let me double check something. So we require regularly 6-foot trees for all the other commercial uses instead of the 8-foot trees. So we could say just as per the ordinance, and they'd be required to plant 6-foot trees.
Sounds good to me.
Do you have anything else?
Just something that I don't know why I put it. I just put 8C under credit for existing conditions. Few, fingers crossed, laugh out loud. I don't know.
That they would maintain some wooded areas
I
as
guess.
a credit.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should leave the 8-foot trees so that they are encouraged to leave a few trees around the area.
Okay, Lee, you had some comments on solar?
Just in section 11A, again, the back that says may include a provision for, oh, here's a provision for inflationary cost adjustments. So you've got that language in there. And it says may, I think it should say shall. But inflationary cost adjustments is the best way to put it. So you already got that there.
Yeah, I don't know that legally we can do that, but it's there. I'll
Really?
double check. Yeah. Because how do you know what the cost of inflation is going to be in 20 years?
Well, but if you adjust it every year,
Right.
So what index are you using?
I don't know.
CPI?
Pick one.
Well,
Pick one.
but that would be critical. Is it like
I
a
agree.
manufacturing index?
So I think that there needs to be a little bit more fleshing out of that, but I need to talk with Todd and see if he's comfortable with how we can reevaluate that and how we collect, because somebody's already got their solar panels in. If they don't up their performance guarantee, do we say, okay, you're in violation of your special use permit and then go through a revocation process? I think we need to,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm
though.
sure there are legal ways for the township to force that issue if they signed an agreement that they'll do that.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else for solar?
I just had a question on no minimum lot size.
Mm,
No, I don't have a suggestion. I'm just wondering if there should be a minimum lot size.
yeah. There's pros and cons to it. I guess it depends on how much you want to encourage it or not. A lot of times they are larger, but you can have smaller kind of panels. I'm trying to think where I just saw one. It was just kind of a small,
Small farm with
yeah.
well, I'd put that as a question for the PC to decide
Yeah.
what acreage they might want to min-max.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because there's one I just saw, that was very small, but the one out in front of Cherryland Electric out in Grand, they put in, and theirs is only like 2 or 3 row. It's very small on their property. They're an electric company, so it goes right into their grid. But if somebody had just some space on their commercial property and they wanted to put up, I saw down by Adrian, there's a big barn, like a farm market barn, or more like a nursery, and they have heritage solar panels all on top of their building. So, something like that, that's actually a utility grade, but it's on the building, and it seems small in comparison when we're talking about solar farms, but it still works.
I just noticed the other day that Elk Rapids put a solar installation in at the water treatment center.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pretty good size.
Okay.
Okay,
Telecommu-
I had one
Yeah.
more. Under C, application requirements go down to 9, sound limitations. That doesn't express any limitations. It says identify noise levels. So did we mean to set some kind of limitations there?
We could change the title and just say sound and say you have to identify it, or we could say that the noise shall not be louder than whatever at the property line, shall not be louder than the neighboring properties of the property line or something.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, but that's not, what follows is not a limitation.
Yeah. They can have some noise in components, so they can put the components interior so that you can't hear them at the property lines. Okay. Communication towers. I can work on the performance language on this as well.
Is this the same
Well,
as what's in there
That's on
today?
number 13, right? B13, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, yeah, similar to what's in the existing. Any
Well,
comments?
and 6263, where it says minimize the total number of towers throughout the community, that's very subjective. So do we want to put a number on that? I mean, is the intent to consolidate everything into, we've already got 2 towers in the community that I know of, maybe there's more, but is it a matter of getting as many installations on the existing towers and not expanding the number of towers?
Right, and so that intent is there because then later on in this, in number 2, they're supposed to provide documentation to why they can't use an existing tower.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of says this is what we want, and then now prove it to us, and why we're
Okay,
asking for that
okay.
to be proved.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else in towers?
Yeah, under landscaping, the reverse or converse of what I had mentioned before and the others, why wouldn't we have a screening from the roads as well as adjacent properties? That would be 5A, landscaping.
In section 13, it gets, again, here's another example of a different kind of reclamation. These would be very minimal. These things don't really disturb the land that much. They're not nearly as intrusive as the big wind turbine or solar energy installation. But in here, it says that the planning commission may require the applicant to file a bond. So there's another way of it. It seems to me that if the planning commission is going to decide to have language for a solar energy farm and have language for wind turbines and have the, the existing language we have now for telecommunications towers, that the reclamation process, and for extractive industries, the reclamation process should be the same.
Yeah.
The same process of how they make a deposit, how they address inflation, how they address the end game. It's all the same so that there's no question. Now, the type of reclamation is going to be different for everyone. Like the gravel pit's going to have a whole different thing than a telecommunication tower, but the language should be the same for all these and has to, I just think it's mandatory to have some sort of an escalation clause in there based on inflation by whatever system they use.
Oh, she can make it
Yeah.
consistent.
That's
Yeah.
what I just wrote
Right.
that down when you started talking
Yeah.
about consistency between all. If I can make them all be the same way, then we'll just treat them one way and do that. I think that's great.
Anything else?
Wineries, breweries, and distilleries. So there's a lot of language in the existing ordinance related to these uses. That I kind of pared back because it talks a lot of the language talks about special events and items like that. And I gotta look here.
I'm sorry, where are we?
6.28, page 52. Wind turbines, we're going to make the one issue you were going to raise, we're going to make it consistent.
So I took some of the language and having a hard time finding it here again. Bear with me. That we had that was in the existing ordinance, but I didn't bring over the activities associated with the wineries, meaderies, or cideries. But kind of after hearing conversation tonight, I might need to add some of that language back in because that sounds like something people really liked to do. The thing is that I think that wineries. Well, I guess we do have them in the ag district.
No, yeah.
But I should, I guess, bring some of that language over. I think some of the language is a little excessive and it makes it really difficult, and we really shouldn't be regulating certain things that are in our current ordinance. And I also have personal experience with a lot of that language because all of that language came from a different ordinance that I used to deal with. That we went through court on a couple of different times. And so that was when it was added in that language. I don't know if Chris may have been the planner in that community at the same time, so that's why it's the same language that's here too. But it's troublesome, I guess. So I guess for wineries and breweries and distilleries, that may be a broader discussion we'll have to have at the planning commission level about what gets regulated and what doesn't and how that functions. Because everybody kind of wants to encourage them, but then they also kind of cause a lot of hassle if you go, not the wineries themselves, but the associated activities like weddings and things like that is where you get into the trouble typically.
So would you call out the language that's troublesome?
Yeah.
I'll make note of that the PC should discuss that.
Yeah.
You didn't let me put my one line in.
Thank you.
And then the Upland game bird hunting preserves, this comes from the existing zoning ordinance. For that's very specific use. I don't know, do you have an upland game hunting preserve in the township?
Not that I know of.
I think I've heard people talk about wanting to do it though.
Is that what, because it's a very interesting specific use that I don't typically see. So I was like, wondered if somebody wanted to do it and it got added in at one time and then we just don't have one or whatnot. So these come from the existing ordinance, the upland game bird stuff.
Where would it be? In Timberland agriculture?
It is, it's in the Timberland and in the ag district. As special use permits in both. Any comments, questions?
Not for me on it.
Okay. Well, that's the end of that section then. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, next steps would be to get it all formatted for you in more of a final format. That would also include Article 3, getting all of those, that's going to get laid out differently than how you saw it, all the use table. And then also your definitions will all get updated and refined in that final layout. So we'll probably spend a little bit more time on definitions at that time after you get a chance to kind of read through the whole document. So at this time, I think it'll probably take a month for me to get it all laid out for you. And then I want to get it to you and allow you time to be able to read through it and make your notes and comments on it. So
Once that's out, could we schedule a meeting? I'm kind of up, you're talking about a period where I'm up in the air on whether I'm going to travel or not.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was kind of thinking. I think it'd be better to schedule it once we get it out. Because if I get it out and then you can evaluate and say, I need 2 weeks to look at this, I need a month to get it scheduled, get that next meeting scheduled. Will that work?
We'll probably need what, about 4 hours? I'm not being
Yeah.
facetious. I mean,
I think
we
you need
probably
more than that.
Well,
Well, we might have to do it over 2 meetings if it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
was thinking.
something. Yeah, set it up for one, maybe set up 2 meetings, maybe a week or 2 apart, and then,
Yep.
you know, if we happen to get through it
You
quickly.
may be right. 4 hours, we could do it.
you're rethinking?
Are you providing dinner?
You wouldn't want to do that.
Not unless it's carry-in.
Yeah.
So are you gonna have, is it gonna be like it's ready, if you make no changes, great, it's done, it'll have all the links to the,
It won't have the links in it yet.
Okay.
I'll do the links once it gets adopted.
okay,
Because it takes some time to get that all put in
that's
there.
fair. I mean, it'd be nice to have it for us.
I
but
know.
That's totally fair. I wouldn't want to do it either.
So we're not going to set any dates tonight.
No,
not, no.
my goal is to, in a month, have a document ready for you to review. And we'll schedule a meeting at that time.
When we say May 1st.
That works.
All right. May 1st for Sarah's submission. And then
And we'll
I'll
schedule.
do a poll
Yeah.
by email to see, what.
Give us
people
some
think.
options or whatever
Yeah.
when people are
Yeah.
available.
But I would think we'd need at least a minimum of 2 weeks to go through it.
Yeah.
And then set something up so, you'll get your 2 weeks. And then, so we would be somewhere mid to late May for the first meeting. Time frame, couple weeks either way.
Okay.
And then early June for the second meeting.
Yeah, depending on everybody's schedule, we're starting to get into a hairy time of the year.
Vacation time and,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, well. Any public comment? There isn't any. Any board member comments? Except thank you again, guys.
Yes, thanks for your input.
We got just a little over 2 hours. Not quite 2 hours. Perfect. So I'll make the motion to adjourn. Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.